Globally, around 600 million people call forests home, mostly in the world's tropical regions. A further 800 million people depend, to some extent, on forests to provide for their livelihoods. The world's primary forests remain under significant threat from damaging government policies, economic activities that promote deforestation, and biophysical changes set in train by climate change. Logging for timber and clearing to make way for mining, cropping, grazing and urban development continue to make inroads into the remaining large areas of intact forest. This has well-documented impacts on biodiversity and greenhouse gas emissions, but it also impinges on the people who live in and depend on these forests for livelihoods. Formally protecting forests has proven necessary but insufficient for maintaining large areas of intact forests from external immediate pressures such as incursion by timber getters, agricultural interests and mining companies. People also live amongst these forests, supporting their livelihoods from the ecosystem services the forests provide, such as subsistence food and materials, and also supplies of marketable products that they might trade. The forests are also the basis for indigenous cultures and cosmologies. Their relationships to country is intimately tied to the cycles of nature, their patterns of natural resource harvesting, and to their connections between past, current and future generations. On a different scale, these forests are highly valued by the global community as one of the key global stocks of sequestered carbon. 25% of all terrestrial carbon is stored in forests, and the importance of specifically intact primary forests as global carbon stocks is only now being fully appreciated. Together, these local, regional and global values can be thought of as representing a basket of benefits. Environmental economics plays a role in demonstrating or quantifying, often in dollar terms, many of these values. Economics can also play a role in designing schemes that can help forest communities begin to capture the value of more of the benefits provided by their conservation efforts. The full spectrum of these ecosystem service values can be assessed through the concept of total economic value, or TEV. Using the framework of TEV ensures all aspects of ecosystem service value are considered in decision-making. TEV distinguishes between use and non-use values. Direct use values are those where the output is consumed directly by people, such as timber getting, harvesting of wild animals, and tourism experiences. Direct use values can often be valued using traditional economic techniques. Indirect use values are derived from goods and services that people benefit from as an outcome of ecological functions, which would otherwise continue regardless of human activation. For example, we benefit from a more stable climate thanks to the preservation efforts of forest communities. Floods are mitigated by the action of upstream land managers in maintaining vegetation cover. These values start to get more difficult to consistently measure. Non-use values variously include bequest, vicarious, and existence values. Those values where we receive value from our own knowledge that other people or future generations are deriving utility, or for our own intrinsic altruistic values we experience from nature. An option value is that inherent in maintaining use and non-use values into the future. Estimating these values rely on techniques from environmental economics. The fundamental problem of environmental economics stems from the premise that the activities that provide value for one person are often in conflict with another. Exchanges of value are needed, but often we lack the institutions to enable values to be traded off. Opportunities to exchange value is not only needed between different levels of environmental service delivery, but also between different communities of interest. One group of people may be custodians of a habitat that provides ecosystem services to another. For example, foregoing income from the sale of timber or refraining from clearing forests to make way for a palm oil plantation is a cost or opportunity cost to those undertaking the conservation, yet they have no mechanism for which to receive compensation. and the beneficiaries of maintained ecological function often have no requirement to make good. Instead, they can free ride. Understanding where the value proposition lies is a key part of understanding how a forest conservation economy can be financed and structured to both protect forests and improve human well-being. Working out who benefits from conservation actions and when and how they benefit is a starting point. Conversely, understanding who forgoes opportunities or income, who pays the costs, obviously comes next. Watershed services, such as the retention of forest cover to provide drinking water or to reduce sediment flowing into a coral reef lagoon, is a further example where one party is providing a service, in this instance clean water and a healthy reef, for which it does not receive compensation from another party, perhaps a beach hotel complex, that is benefiting from high levels of environmental quality. Exchanges of economic value such as these need mechanisms that can enable that exchange. One such enabling concept is payments for ecosystem services, or PES. PES is an exchange of value for the retention of functioning ecosystems, often in the form of cash or in-kind payments, in exchange for the preservation of habitats. Often this value exchange is international in nature, a transfer from the global north to the global south under schemes such as REDD+. However, such distances, both geographic and cultural, can clearly cause difficulties for governance in ensuring both parties uphold their commitments. PES schemes are characterised as being voluntary, fair, based on conditionality, and as being pro-poor. They can be structured in a number of ways, depending on the emphasis given to each of these attributes. Fully commoditized schemes are those that emphasize conditionality on the outcomes achieved, the amount of carbon stored in a reforestation project, for example. Other types of schemes emphasize behavioral change, such as refraining from earning income from deforestation. Often in such schemes, poverty reduction outcomes are included. Thirdly, there are hybrid versions that emphasize co-investment in landscape stewardship and local resource management, where buyers and sellers of services are less well defined. PES schemes of all three flavours will play a significant role in tropical forest preservation into the future. The microeconomics teams from Griffith University in Brisbane and Woods Hole Research Centre in Massachusetts are working as part of an interdisciplinary team on a primary forest project using 3 case studies in Melanesia, Brazil, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Each of the case studies present different challenges for understanding how local economic and biophysical factors and property right arrangements impact on people's potential for livelihoods from forest economies, and how PES schemes can be designed. To help start answer some of these questions, we are carrying out field studies using 2 survey methods, Q method and choice experiments. We are also carrying out a systematic literature review to document the global state of knowledge on the economic value of the ecosystem services provided by primary forests. Q method can determine dominant discourses amongst groups of people. It looks for commonalities in the way people think about their world. In answer to a primer question, we ask people, through strategic sampling, to rank issues by sorting statement cards in a quasi-normal distribution. The card set is constructed from observations from focus groups and interviews where people are encouraged to discuss issues within the domain of interest. As such, it can uncover non-hypothesized concepts. Once all the sampling is completed, the data is subject to statistical analysis that looks for correlations between people's sorts. These correlations are considered dominant factors or discourses. The last step is to describe these factors in a narrative format. These descriptions can provide insight into community attitudes towards the domain in question, can uncover areas of consensus, and can help refine the language with which to engage communities in projects. We have performed Q on the island of Tanna in the Republic of Vanuatu in Melanesia, seeking to reveal the dominant attitudes towards natural resource management of forests and coral reefs in the context of environmental and social and economic change. To ensure the process was well understood and engaging for the participants, we used an illustrator to provide a sketch for each statement card. From the perspective of forest conservation, our initial findings from Tanner are encouraging. The strongest correlation, by a significant degree, suggests there's a widely shared discourse of environmental stewardship based on strong and intimate connections between the community, the landscape, and the resources it provides. This is bound up with traditional practices and community decision-making structures into the concept of custom. A second dominant view is similar to the primary factor, with its strong emphasis on environmental stewardship, but it also includes selected elements of modernity, such as access to clean water and sanitation, and improved medical services. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, we are using a choice experiment to estimate community preferences for the ideal structure of a PES scheme. Choice experiments can reveal preferences for ecosystem services provided by forests, where there are no markets or surrogate markets through which people can express those preferences. Respondents are asked to choose between alternative hypothetical outcomes described in terms of different combinations of levels of delivery of a range of environmental attributes. In addition, a monetary value or price tag is normally included as one of the attributes. This is used to reveal compensation rates for loss of service or payment rates for greater environmental quality. When scaled up, these estimations can provide aggregate monetary values for indirect use and non-use values of forest ecosystem services. In this instance, the choice experiment will determine what level of payment might be needed to secure a continuous change in behaviour in how forest resources are exploited. The experiment will also seek to determine people's preferences for how a payment is administered and paid. For example, is there a preference for payment in cash or in kind with goods and services such as household items or community assets such as schools and medical centres? Our findings will be able to help policymakers understand how PES schemes can be best designed to meet the local conditions and preferences. Lastly, we are undertaking a systematic literature review guided by the overarching question of what is the economic value of ecosystem services provided by the world's primary forests. Our review has 3 steps. Firstly, we have identified the key literature through a broad-ranging search of 4 databases: Scopus, Web of Science, ScienceDirect and Google. Next, we've been through a screening process, checking for relevance and ensuring the material selected is relevant to our research questions. Finally, we are undertaking eligibility and exclusion assessment as part of our reading and documenting process. In our search, we assessed more than 14,000 results. 1,700 of these were deemed relevant. After removing duplicates, we are left with 1,377 studies for our analysis. We are currently undertaking this 3rd stage and beginning to analyse the data. Our goal is to build a database of ecosystem service values for forests. From this database, we can undertake meta-analyses of the data and ask more specific questions. Protecting forests is as much about people and livelihoods as it is trees, biodiversity, and ecosystem integrity. Understanding which ecosystem services are valued, by whom and by how much, can help stimulate the institutions required to enable the value exchanges in forest use and protection to be better reconciled. Harnessing the basket of benefits provided by forests can help demonstrate alternative ways forests can be valued, instead of resorting to our default position of simply valuing them as a function of their timber or as a barrier to agricultural development.